Good morning. We will pay attention to creditors reconciliation today. Before we start with the question, I just want to recap again. In the books of Brainline Stores, that is our business, the people that we buy from are our creditors, so we will record it in the creditors ledger. And for each individual creditor, we will have a separate account in which we will record all their transactions, purchases, payments, returns, etc. Because they are our creditors, it is a liability. Liabilities increase on the credit side and decrease on the debit side. In the books of the creditor, that means in the books of Sunnyside wholesalers, they will open an account for us, but they will do this in their debtors ledger because they are selling to us. So in their books, we are an asset, and assets increase on the debit side and decrease on the credit side. Therefore, all the entries that will appear in our books on the credit side will appear in their books on the debit side. And if we record something on the debit side, they will record it on the credit side. So it's very important to remember, if we do these corrections and omissions, when we think of the entries that must be completed in our books, we must do it as a liability and increase on the credit side and decrease on the debit side. If we prepare the creditors' reconciliation statement, we are doing what they are still supposed to do in the future. Therefore, the creditors' reconciliation statement is treated like an asset. They will increase on the debit side and decrease on the credit side. The second thing that you must remember is we must determine who must still record the entry. So if we must record it, we will show it in the creditors ledger. If they still have to record the entry, we will show it in the creditors reconciliation statement. If we made a mistake, we will record it in our books. If they made a mistake, we will record it in the creditors reconciliation statement. The following information was obtained from Brain Online. Sunnyside Wholesalers is a creditor, so in the books of Brain Stores, we will record creditors ledger to show that we've got a creditor, Sunnyside Wholesalers. In our books, the creditors will increase on the credit side and decrease on the debit side. The following account appeared in this creditors ledger of Brainline Stores for February. The following statement of account was received from Sunnyside Wholesalers, so they've got an account for us. In their books, we are a debtor because they sold to us, so they will record sales on the debit side and increase our account on the debit side. They will record payments and returns on the credit side and decrease our account on the credit side. We have to compare these two accounts with each other now to see where is the differences. Now, if we look at the opening balance, it is different from the opening balance in Brain Stores, and there's a lot of differences. So what we will first of all do is we will tick off the amounts that is correct, and then we will look at the additional information to correct the mistakes. Okay, so we've got an amount for 1,800 and they've got that amount for 1,800. In our books, we've got a credit note, and they also have that credit note 480. We paid them a check for 3240, and they also have the check, and the discount on the check is also in their books, and then all the other entries are not the same. Invoice number 448 was not received from Sunnyside wholesalers. So it means in our books we recorded invoice 448 in the wrong account. So we have to correct it in our books. The invoice in our books was recorded on the credit side. So if we want to correct it, we will have to cancel that invoice on the debit side. After each transaction, we will determine what is the balance after this transaction. In Sunnyside Wholesalers account, at the end of the month, we recorded that we actually have a debit balance, so they owe us 540 Rand. Therefore, we will start with this balance where we stopped in our account in the creditors ledger. So we will start with the 540 negative figure. And there we show that they owe us 540. So if we subtract the invoice on the debit side, remember the account increases on the credit side and decreases on the debit side. Because we have a debit balance, it means that this 1020 must be added to the 540 because both of them are on the debit side. And that means now we have a debit balance of 1560. So the creditor is actually owing us 1,560 Rand. In the account that we received from the creditor, they ended the account with a balance of 5080. So according to them, we owe 5,080. Just as we did with the creditors recon, we started where we stopped. We will start the creditors reconciliation statement with this closing balance in their account. So we will show that there's a debit balance in their books for 5,080 Rand. So in the creditors ledger, we start with the closing balance at the end of the month. In the creditors reconciliation, we start with their closing balance at the end of the month. It is the policy of Sunnyside wholesalers to allow 10% settlement discount if the account is paid within 30 days. Brainline Stores issued a check on the 31st of January for 2,700 after 10% discount was received. The bookkeeper of Sunnyside Wholesalers did not record this discount. That means we have to work out what is the discount so that we can record that discount in the reconciliation statement. If we paid the total debt, we would pay 100%. We received discount of 10%. So the amount that we paid was only 90%. And the amount that we paid, we have to go and look up and see that they say we issued a check for 2,700. So we didn't pay the full amount. We paid 2,700. That was equal to the 90% of the debt that we paid. If we want to calculate the discount, the one that I want, 10, over the one that I know, 90, times 2,700 will give me 300 Rand. If we look at these two accounts, we see that according to us, the opening balance was 3,600. According to their books, the opening balance is 6,600. So it means they haven't recorded the 3,000 Rand that we paid at the end of January. Then they recorded the 2,700 that they received from us, and they reduced this amount to 3,900. They never recorded the 300 Rand discount. That's why there's a difference between our opening balance of 3,600 and their opening balance after they've taken the check into account of 3,900. If we correct this 300 now, it means that our opening balances will be the same. We will record in the creditor's reconciliation statement, because the creditor must complete this entry and show that they still have to take the discount into account, and when they do that, they will reduce our account with 300 Rand. Our balance at the beginning was 3,600. After they take this 2,700 into account, they've got a balance of 3,900. So they only took the payment into account and not the 300 Rand discount. If we show that discount now in the creditor's reconciliation statement, it means that our 3,600 opening balance and their balance will be the same after we recorded the 300 Rand. We will show that they must reduce our account with the 300 Rand for the receipt that we paid and they didn't take the discount into account. Credit note 84 was omitted in the account of Sunnyside Wholesalers in the creditor's ledger. That means that we still have to record it, and therefore we will show this entry for the credit note in the creditor's ledger. The credit note does not appear in the creditor's ledger, but if we look at the account that we receive from the creditor, there is a credit note for 400 Rand. And because we still have to correct it and we still have to record this entry, we will record it in the creditor's ledger. Credit note number 84 means that our account will reduce, and because we have a debit balance, it means it's on the debit side, the 400, so we will have to add it because all three of those figures are on the debit side. And now they owe us 1,960 Rand. Invoice number 490 was received after we closed our accounting records, so we still have to go and record it in the creditor's ledger. Invoice number 490, according to the statement of account, is 3,800. So we have to show that we bought more goods for 3,800 Rand. In our books, the 3,800 will appear on the credit side because we're increasing our debt at the creditor. And now we've got a credit amount of 3,800 minus the 1,960 debit balance that we've got. So we actually owe the creditor 1,840 Rand. Check number 189 was issued in time to receive settlement discount. In our books, we see that we issued a check for 3,600. That was 90% of the amount. So if we want to know the discount, it will be 10 divided by 90 times 3,600, and that will give us 400 Rand. So in our books, we only recorded the check and not the discount. So we have to record the 400 Rand discount in the creditor's ledger. In the statement of account, this check is not recorded at all because they did not receive it in time. So they will have to record the check for 3,600 and the 400 Rand discount in the future. Therefore, we will record it in the creditor's reconciliation statement. So we already recorded the 3,600 in our account, but we did not record the discount. So it means we will record the discount, and that means our debt will decrease to 1,440. In the creditors' books, they haven't recorded this at all because they did not receive the check in time. So they will show that they will decrease our account with the 3,600 for the check, and they will decrease our account with the 400 Rand discount. Sunnyside Wholesalers issued credit note 87 for 240 Rand to correct a mistake that was made on invoice number 423. The bookkeeper of Brainline incorrectly recorded this amount as 420. So there's a mistake in the books of the creditor's ledger in our books. So we will have to go and look what is the difference between 420 and 240 to see with how much did we make a mistake. So we will have to record the 180 Rand. This was a credit note, so it means that credit notes are recorded on the debit side. We showed too much on the debit side, so we have to correct this mistake on the credit side. If we look at the creditor's ledger, we see that credit note number 87 was recorded on the credit side as 420 Rand. A credit note should be recorded on the debit side. So it means that we will have to take this amount on the credit side out of the account and record it on the debit side, and then we will also have to record the 240 on the debit side, because that is the amount that was supposed to be recorded on the debit side. So we will take the 420 that was incorrectly recorded on the credit side, show it on the debit side, and then also show the credit note for 240 on the debit side. So it means that we decrease our account with 660 Rand. If this was not on the wrong side of the account, we would just subtract the two figures from each other and show that we make a correction for 180 Rand. Because this entry was incorrectly recorded on the wrong side of the account of the creditor, it means that we first have to correct the mistake, removing it from the credit side, and then we have to do the correct entry for 240 Rand. After we made all these corrections and omissions, it means that the totals at the end of the month must show the same outstanding amount in our books and in the creditor's reconciliation. If it doesn't show the same figure, it means there's still mistakes, and you will have to go and look for those mistakes.